MrBeast's channel is dying and it's his fault. Also, this could affect your channel in a pretty negative way. So let me explain. MrBeast has a kind of famous quote. And everyone has a famous quote, I guess you could say, which is to get 1% better every single time. The issue when you do get 1% better every single time, it becomes increasingly more difficult to get 1% better infinitely. You can't infinitely get 1% better. And what I mean by that is if I go to MrBeast and I scroll back down to roughly a year ago, all of his videos are getting like 200 million views. The minimum amount of views he's getting is 200 million, right? And then he's often getting 300 to 400 million views. But nowadays, he's struggling to break the 200 million view barrier, right? His floor a year ago was 200 million views. Now it's only 180, and that's his ceiling. It looks like to be 180, maybe around 200. So this is pretty bad. And the reason why this is bad is I think it speaks to a few things, and I'm not going to break it down because I can't, say for certainty what is causing the decline in the MrBeast viewership. However, one thing that I do think is potentially causing it, and something that you might also face in your own YouTube channel, is the 1% better. And the reason why I take issue with this is like, let's say, if I'm at level 1 on YouTube, and I'm bringing up the mirror board here. If I'm at, level 1, right? Okay. Level 1. Let me also scroll out here. Let's say I'm at level 1, right? I also need to, let's say I'm at level 1, right? Okay. To go to level 2, right? I'll just do level 2. To go to level 2, right? It might only take me like, let's say 30 minutes. And this is a 1% improvement. This is a 1% improvement, okay? It might only take me 30 minutes of my time to get 1% better, to go from level 1 to level 2 in terms of learning a skill. But someone at MrBeast level, who's like, let's say level 99, right? It's going to be way more difficult. It might take, a year, 1 year to get 1% better, right? In this case, it might take 1 year to get 1% better in this case, right? To get to like level 100, okay? Let's do level 100. And the reason why this is bad, and the reason why it sucks on twofold, is in order to continually get 1% better, it gets continually harder, right? That's part of the whole 1%, kind of like, I'm not going to call it like fallacy, but like theorem that no one ever talks about. Like, it's incredibly easy to go from level 1 to level 10 on YouTube, right? Or to get 1% better to the point that you can get to level 10 on YouTube, right? You could probably get way better in a year, like 10 times better in a year by improving 1%. And I think for people under 100,000 subscribers, it's really, really good to focus on getting 1% better, whether it be titles, thumbnails, videos, editing, focusing on retention, focusing on strategy, pivoting in the market, understanding your positioning. It's really easy to get 1% better when you're like, let's say less than 100,000 subscribers. After 100,000 subscribers, I'd say it's also probably pretty easy up into like that 500,000 subscriber mark. With some of my clients in the past, I've seen like some pretty difficult, some pretty large difficulties getting to like that 500,000 subscriber mark. And then from there, like at that point, you're already pretty good. I would say like if you're at 500,000 subscribers, you're a good YouTuber, right? You have a lot of interest in your content potentially, or you're solving problems in a unique way. At that point though, to get to 1 million, you might have to functionally do something different, or you have to just focus incredibly hard on the things that you're really good at and that differentiate you from the market, right? So there's that involved. And then after like, let's say, 1 million plus subs, and I work with a bunch of 1 million plus sub channels, we don't really focus on getting 1% better at this point. We actually don't even talk about that. The only thing that we focus on right now in like the current segment for these YouTubers is focusing purely on data and math and trying to figure out what is mathematically the best video. And you can make that argument that it is 1% better. I'd say it's a little bit different because we're not trying to improve anything. We're trying to break into new things. So semantics their side. But even then, like it's taking us like, let's say 5 to 6 hours to come up with an idea that gets maybe 20% more views on average than my client's current catalog. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is the advice of getting 1% better is really good until a point. And to understand that, I also have to talk about viewer expectations, right? So we have viewer expectations, okay? And what are viewer expectations? Well, viewer expectations come to the head of essentially what viewers expect from your content. So if a viewer interacts with your content and you're at 30,000 subscribers, and then they watch you all the way up to 100,000 subscribers, what happens is they see your gradual growth. They see this gradual growth, right? So if I start watching here, this is like, let's say 30K, okay? Like you're pretty good, but when you get to 100K, you're much better. And as a viewer that started here, I also understand that I'm getting served better content continually. So over time, let's say this stretch of time takes 1 year, 1 year here, and I'm just getting 1% better. I'm improving my content. What ends up happening is that my expectations fall in line with your rate of growth. And this is the thing that I absolutely think is killing MrBeast's channel, potentially. My opinion is the biggest driving factor of it. is that because their expectations grow with your growth and your understanding of YouTube as well, there becomes a really fucking massive problem when you can no longer sustainably get 1% better. And what I mean in terms of like sustainably getting 1% better is like I said, all the way up until like probably around 500,000 subscribers. And I've noticed this trend with most of my clients, but I don't want to say for sure because it is dependent on niche. And this is only for long form clients. Is like at 500K subs, I hate to break it to everyone watching this, the difference between 500K subs here and let's say 5 million is actually pretty nominal. You roughly get, I would say, 98% of like what the guy at 5 million subs is doing for the 500K channel. I've seen it all the time. So with that being said, it's like in order to constantly, and I mean constantly meet the expectations of the viewers who've grown with you at this point, you have to continually growing at the same rate. What happens when that does not happen? You don't continually grow. Well, you grow to a certain point, and then one of two things happens. You either plateau out, kind of like this, with some like minor growth over time, where you're still getting 1% better, and you still have a massive viewership base, and your back catalog continues to grow. And then this will happen, right? You get that continual growth. The other thing that can happen is you get to a certain point, you're not getting much better, right? You're tapering off, and then all of a sudden is that you go down. You slowly go down, and then after you slowly go down, maybe you flatline. Maybe you flatline something like this, right? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is I think that's essentially what's happened to MrBeast here. And I have seen it personally with clients of mine, and it is a very hard thing to get out of because the ways that you get out of it are not like inherently easy to understand, right? So you have to ask yourself, like, is it an audience problem? Like, am I just targeting the wrong audience? Have I reached maximum saturation as well? Which could also be a thing. Is it a potential idea problem? Like the ideas don't make sense anymore. Is it actually an improvement problem, right? I'm not improving at 1% rate anymore. And people are fatigued by that because they have certain expectations in their mind based on watching my content and their history with me, that because I was continually getting 1% better and I'm no longer getting continually 1% better, they're no longer satisfied for the product that I'm putting out. And the reason why I'm bringing that up for the MrBeast stuff is that I think, at least from my opinion, when I watch Beast occasionally, I think like this video right here is like one of my favorite videos, is that, or actually, hold on, I'm gonna scroll back up to use the other laser video. Yeah, this video right here is like one of my favorite videos last year. It's like these videos are, I think, objectively, I'm not gonna say like the best MrBeast videos, but I found objectively the most entertaining, right? I found like he really kind of mastered his craft in this area. I thought these videos were really good, but if you watch something like this video right here, or honestly like any of these videos right here, and then you watch these videos, the most recent videos, the difference in quality is nominal. There's no longer these gigantic leaps and bounds for how good the videos are. He might have increased expenditure in terms of revenue and time on videos, but for at least my enjoyment, and I'm just speaking anecdotally here, it doesn't feel much different. This video, which I thought was a good video, didn't feel much different than the laser maze. I still preferred the laser maze actually, and this should be like a more interesting idea. Like men versus women survive in the wilderness for $500,000. Like this seems to be massively data backed, yet like it's half of the laser views video, and this video is underperforming for this time period. And if you go back even further than the MrBeast stuff, like the jump he took 4 years ago to like last year was massive, right? Like big videos, incredibly gripping storylines, and I thought was really good. But now it's no longer the case. Right? He's getting less views, potentially like higher retention. And I think it's because he's no longer getting that 1% improvement, and audiences are fatigued with the fact that everything is the same. He right here, or in this case, actually, from my understanding, like the way I would say it is like he's kind of here. He's like in option 2 instead of like option 1. Because he had his rate of growth, he was getting 1% better, and then eventually he tapered off where he reached market saturation. And in addition to that, it's really difficult at that point to get 1% better. And now he's on a little bit of decline to a flat line in the sense that people are fatigued. They're fatigued by the fact that he's not longer getting better and he's just doing the same things over and over again, even though he's trying to make improvements, I'd assume. And those improvements are not being felt by viewers. And I will bring up something anecdotally as well. Actually, I can just bring up, I'll bring up a past client. I'll bring up a past client to explain this and like exactly what's happened in action with my client, Otter, or my previous client, Otter. And I will explain this because having expectations set for viewers is really good. But after a certain amount of time, what will happen is it'll just backfire on you in the sense that because they have those expectations, you have to meet them, and you stop meeting them. They just leave. They stop watching. So if I go all the way back to when I worked with Otter in his Apex Legends content, gotta scroll real far back here. This might also crash, which would be very bad. Oh wait, here we go. So I don't know what'll show in the data. I should try to get dashboard access to this, but we were like constantly getting better, right? We'd focus on like one area and we get marginally better. We'd focus on another area and we get marginally better, right? We'd focus on ideas. Okay, then we have the ideas nailed. Okay, then let's take a look at retention. What's causing the retention loss? We'd focus on that and get better. Then, okay, let's look at thumbnails. What's wrong with the CTR? Then we focus on that and get better. And after a while, we like had all these things get really good, but like the improvements to go from like, you know, a level 80 to like 81 in terms of titles, thumbnails, viewer satisfaction from the videos was like no longer like a week-long process. It could be a month-long process on just one aspect of the video, which you can do. But in that 1 month, viewers are getting served the same content over and over and over again, and they're no longer being satisfied in the sense they're expecting a certain rate of growth and progress and entertainment, and they're no longer getting that. And when they're no longer getting that, they're no longer inclined to keep watching because they're watching the same thing at the same level, and that's going to build up fatigue within them. And after they get that fatigue within them, what ends up happening is they leave. They find someone else who's growing faster or who's offering a better product because that person is already at a higher level potentially. So yeah, it's a dangerous death spiral. And what happens is eventually you lose a lot of interest in your content, and it's really hard to gain that interest back because you have to make those incremental improvements again to start doing that. And the issue is to go from like I said, level 99 to level 100, it could take a year, it could take 5 years, it could take 10 years, which is why, and this is again totally hypothetical headcanon, I think MrBeast is moving, or not moving off platform, but is doing Beast games where it allows him to do a larger thing off platform where it's like funded by Amazon and he can do all that, which is great. I think that's cool. But I also think to an extent, it's like almost natural evolution. I'm sure he'll come back to YouTube. I mean, he's not done on YouTube, of course. But by being off of YouTube and having that kind of insulation, he can focus on a larger market who might not have seen him on YouTube, for example, because everyone has Prime Video. Or he doesn't have to worry about that constant increase in 1% improvement due to the fact that it's like, I guess you could say, traditional television. The reason why I bring this up for your channel and why it's bad for your channel, and I'm kind of going on a long headcanon tangent here, is that if you're focused on getting 1% better, that's great. The issue is what happens when you cannot get 1% better, or in order to get 1% better, the time expenditure or potential revenue expenditure that you are spending is exceeding the amount that you're going to get in return for getting that 1% better. Which is why for some clients, I actually purposely get them to this stage, to stage 1, where instead of focusing on the rapid growth, we get the rapid growth out of the way, we fix all the problems, and then we just focus on sustainability and just gradual increases in sustainability instead of gradual increases in sustainability versus gradual increases in improvement. And what I mean by that is that instead of trying to get better, I'm just trying to get more of the audience I have without getting better. So being smarter about it. And that's how we do outlier ideation. That's why I use 1 of 10 to come up with new ideas. That's why I use NextLev to find new niches to look for ideas and things like that. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope you can understand why, hey, the 1% better advice is actually bad. And I personally think it's having a massive detrimental effect on Beast's channel. And I'm sure he has internal data and massive teams. But at least from my point of view and some others' point of views, that this could be a potential issue where it's like, you know, you can't really go much higher. And people are tired of watching essentially no growth and nothing new. So yeah, that is kind of what I'm seeing here. Curious to see what you guys are saying, and I would really, really highly recommend against getting 1% better. Continually get 1% better for the first year, 2, 3, or 4 on YouTube. But if you want to have a sustainable career, getting 1% better long term, I think is actually net negative. And I think you should focus on, instead of getting 1% better, how to sustain your peak. And if you can sustain your peak, that's better than trying to reach new peaks, in my opinion, just as a business model, as YouTube, in general. So yeah, that's the video of the day. I want to make this topic, I probably wasn't explained it too well, but I do think it is important to talk about, because by not talking about it, you might fall into a trap that I've seen a lot of guys come to me, at least in the last 6 to 9 months, where they're like, you know, hey, I had all this rapid growth, I ended up getting to this, you know, subscriber milestone, but then views started tapering off, and I still try to keep getting better and better and better. I've seen it time in and time again, where like they hire a retention strategist, they hire a thumbnail strategist, they hire these like hyper specialized guys to try to help them like focus on areas of improvement. But when those areas of improvement are like incremental, in the sense that it's incredibly difficult to squeeze out massive gains in, their audiences no longer cares. So I have to then figure out a comprehensive like whole strategy to either pivot them out, because it's a positioning issue at that point, or it's an audience issue, or trying to figure out how to sustain where they're at and keep going. So I just wanted to explain that to you guys because I think it is a really, really dangerous thing to do. Still do it, but do it cautiously in a way that you can sustain it once you hit those peaks rather than trying to always get 1% better. There's going to be a point where getting 1% better is no longer worth it for your time expenditure, and your audience is going to understand that and they're going to start tapering off. So how can I sustain what I have at that moment? You're going to take a little bit of a drop, but how you can sustain through that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to explain. I hope that was helpful, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.